There was a saying years ago, I can't remember who it was, I think it might have been Smedley Butler, who was a high-ranking military official who said something along the lines, I can't remember the quote exactly, that's one of them, but there's another one about like Uncle Sam comes with like wheat in the one hand, gives crap away, and he always takes more with the other. And that's exactly what happened with the so-called humanitarian interventions in the 1990s. This was about reestablishing the right of the United States to interfere and bomb and kill, which they did in the interventions in the 1990s. For example, in Somalia, killing thousands of people, which was, immortalized in the incredibly racist movie Black Hawk Down, where black Africans are treated with pretty much the same way that they treat monsters or something in a science fiction movie. It was about rehabilitating the right of the U.S. empire to intervene around the world. And I actually don't think it sounds stupid to oppose that. I actually think it sounds smart. How many times do you have to get robbed at gunpoint by the same person before you say, hey, maybe he doesn't want to start my car or whatever? This is the kind of thing you have to think about. And I think when you can differentiate between the politics of the people that rule the countries that the United States is bombing and the right of the United States to bomb people. I think this is it's a very simple thing to do. If you read the Socialist Worker, the ISO's publications, we make that differentiation all the time. We don't gloss over the politics of the resistance in Iraq, which you can see over and over in terms of our writings. But we also have an uncompromising defense of the right of Iraqis to resist a foreign occupation and their troops. If there was some, occupation of Chicago, I would defend the right of right-wing Republicans to resist the occupation of Chicago. I wouldn't care if they were right-wing Republicans.
Would you want the occupation? Yeah, would you want the, because this actually came up on a kind of a blog that I read several months ago, that if the U.S. were invaded, and occupied, that like someone had argued that they would welcome any resistance, even from the right. And I feel like, well, as a leftist, I don't know that I can actually say that.
Well, I think this gets to a good point, because it gets to the Iraqi Communist Party that was brought up earlier.
Right.
The Iraqi Communist Party, I think it was said it's U.S. forces that stand between them and reaction. And it's the U.S. forces, that stand between the Iraqi Communist Party, and obliteration because of their collaboration with the U.S. occupation. If left-wingers in Iraq were actually competing in terms of leadership for resistance to U.S. occupation, that would be a huge step forward. But instead, the Iraqi Communist Party, which used to have a history with lots of political problems, but actually did some good things over the years, decided it was going to collaborate with the biggest imperial power on the planet. And I think that if you actually look at the concrete reality in Iraq, because it's been said a few times, and I feel like it has to be discussed, it is not the United States that stands between reaction and the Iraqi people or a nascent democracy or whatever the propaganda is on the evening news. If you look at the journalism by Patrick Coburn, Nir Rosen, and other respected journalists and independent journalists like Dar Jamal, you can see that the question is that most of the sectarian violence, for example, is being stoked and created by the United States. The United States made a move deliberately towards establishing an Islamic government, and the U.S. consciously decided to create sectarian violence after it became clear that they didn't have, that the people they had brought over, the proxies they had brought over, the Ahmad Chalabais and everything else, didn't have a base in Iraq, and also after Muqtada al-Sadr, who is one of the Shia leaders in Iraq, made overtures towards Sunnis who were resisting the U.S. occupation in Fallujah. After that, they made a decisive...
Starting to run out of time here, so if we could get to maybe...
Last sentence. So after that, they made a decisive turn towards actually siding with different sectarian groups. And it's after that you see the massive escalation of sectarian violence in Iraq. The longer the United States stays there, the more sectarian violence there's going to be, and the more reactionary politics there will be in Iraq. The only solution is for the U.S. to pull out immediately, and then Iraqis can begin to sort that out politically.